We are actually live right now. I will leave it like that. Let me turn off my radio so that
We just take vocals.
vocals. Yeah, I'm not gonna check it. Yeah. So you were saying something.
I was saying the issue of land without repatriation for whites is going to backfire in the same manner it did in Zimbabwe. The ANC has no plan to give people the land and subsidize them and teach them
Yeah.
and teach them how to use this land.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same case with Zimbabwe because one guy from Zimbabwe once told me that Mugabe had a deal with Western powers. That after 10 years, he will have trained black people so that they can take over from whites and start farming tobacco and anything else. So what Mugabe did, he relaxed on that until black people started to panic about his long-term presidency. Then he started to act like a favorite on the side of the people and say, okay, fine, let's take the land from the whites. Knowing that the people themselves are not prepared or trained to take the land. There are no subsidies, no preparations whatsoever. It's just sort of like a rhetoric, trying to win the masses. The masses fall for that. Unfortunately for them, they could not work the land. According to this guy, many people went to these farms and they took tractors, took petrol, they took anything and they sold it as scraps. As a result, they drive the economy to even a downward spiral. And even worse, the West sanctioned Zimbabwe. So the same case is going to happen in South Africa if we allow this guy, Ramaphosa, to take the land without giving us any proper plans as to how we're going to use this land. Because what we will have here is people will take white man's land and then the West will respond to that. And then the Africans will take the land, will not be able to use that land. Because when you are lead by an example, there are lots of lands in the Eastern Cape where you can start and say, okay, fine, some of you must come back to the Eastern Cape, I'll subsidize your farms. In this case, Keutonga Masini. As proven there. And then you can move on now to the rest of the country. So what he's going to do, this guy, is going to lead to the collapse of the South African economy and our sanctions from the West. And the solution that the West will provide is the one that the ANC ran away from. Because from the times of Emperor Haile Selassie and Kwame Nkrumah, it was proposed that the main reason behind the Organization of African Unity was that we're going to have our own parliament, Pan-African parliament, and our own Pan-African currency. And the idea behind that was that we'll back this currency with our mineral resources. And Africa has lots of mineral resources. So much that if countries trade with Africa and Africa fails to meet that trade, they were going to claim as a collateral some of our mines, our lands, and so forth. Something which the West cannot do, whether we're talking about Europe or America, because their money is just paper money, currency, because they destroyed their gold standard in 1930. So the idea now was that if the West was to trade with Africa, they would be forced to back their money with something else. In other words, they will be forced to go back to the gold standard. Meaning that now Africa will be calling the shots with the West. No longer dependent on the West, but the West dependent on the game that Africa is now playing. Because if they refuse, then Africa will refuse to trade with them and trade with the rest of Asia, South America, and the Middle East. In fact, Gaddafi was promising as well as suggesting that this African currency be joined with the League of Nations. Sorry, it was the Arab League. So it was going to be an even bigger bloc, you understand? And those countries are rich with oil, including Nigeria as well as Libya. So we almost have nothing that we need from the West. The West only provides us with manipulation and leadership, which is not leadership because we're not heading toward the same direction. So these guys were trying to free us, and guess what? The ANC sold out Gaddafi, leading up to his assassination. And the idea of land repatriation to blacks came from the PAC. If they were serious about that, they should not have formed the ANC. They should have stayed with the PAC. Because the PAC was interested in the development of the African continent and the black nation as a whole. Because this thing about politics is fooling our people. This is about race, period. It's white people, Asians, blacks, and so forth. So the political game is designed to fool us into thinking that this is just politics, not racial. And so with with Ramaphosa insisting on taking over land from whites, he's just causing troubles because who was this American president, George Bush? When George Bush left office, I was saying when George Bush left office, he had created an economic bubble. And in fact, I remember him saying that it will take a very intelligent person to reverse what he has done. And after that, so many people, blacks and whites, lost their land. So, lost their houses, which were still being paid under bond, as well as jobs. And so people desperately relied on this black guy, Obama, who did nothing to reverse what this guy Bush had done. Why? Because Americans are planning something called the numero. The numero will be the amalgamation of the Canadian currency, the American currency, as well as with the Mexican currency. But because America is richer, the Americans would not want to be associated with this country, Mexico, unless their economy collapses, and they see a benefit now in adding Mexico and Canada to improve the value of their currency. As a matter of fact, many American companies are outsourced to Mexico. And now Trump is building a wall, trying to frustrate the Mexicans so that when they propose the numero, the Mexicans will jump to the wagon, right? Because at least it will say now the borders will be meaningless. Even if we don't go, they will have the same currency, and many of their companies are already here. So what the presidents do is what is similar to what the Illuminati always advertise. They create chaos so that they suggest order out of that chaos. You understand? So if the likes of Ramaphosa or the ANC was serious about black people, they should have never formed the ANC, because the ANC is a capitalist organization. It was designed to preserve the interests of the middle class, those who were privileged. Take the likes of Mandela, for instance, who came from royal families. And they were the first to go to universities like Fort and so forth. They were first to start a law firm. So they were always the first in everything. In other words, what they cared about was maintaining the privilege they have over the average black person. This is why the ANC was formed in the first place. It was not to equal the score or to equal black people as well as the rest of Africa. They do not care about black people. All they care about is just preserving Western politics according to how the Westerners want it to be done. So this whole thing about land redistribution without compensation will lead to an economic collapse, whereby the only way for us to be safe is for them to suggest later on and say, you know what, guys, I think it will be favorable for us to have an African currency. The one which they led to its downfall by leading to Mugabe's, Gaddafi's assassination. So if they were interested in that, they should have supported the OAU. As a matter of fact, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was once a member of the African AU, if not a president. But she didn't suggest or proceeded with the general ideologies of the African Council, the OAU. Instead, she came to pollute it. And later on, this led to and then we'll lose our liberty because we'll be ruled by the West, who will have their own agenda. One of their own agendas is the depopulation of the